Now recording.
Now recording.
Now recording. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about writing, personal writing, writing a book, short story, whatever it may be. But we're going to be talking about the methodologies of writing. We're going to be talking about how you get it done. What gets you through it? What ideas? What's your inspirations? What's your methodology, your pipeline? Just all the nitty-gritty things about writing. And I want the listeners to get nice and cozy. I want you to feel like you're in a 1980s kind of a off walnut brown wood paneling walls with some green short carpet, and it smells like a thrift store, and you're about to play the NES for the first time. I want you to feel like that. I want you to relax, and we're just going to talk about writing. Clark is going to be joining us, and also Megan. But I understand that Clark has been writing for quite a while, and I've got something I'm brewing up. So we decided, we're going to talk about writing today.
Right. Yeah, because as we had spoke before, there's no one real correct way to actually approach writing. Everybody does it different. It's not like it's not like sports, like I said, sports science kind of thing where it's like generally like everybody has their own style, but it's at the end of the day, you're either doing something correct to get results or you're not doing something correct. Like writing can be very strange because there's people who can write sober. There's people that have to write under the influence of something, whatever their substance of choice is. Maybe that same writer can do one or both and get vastly different results. So it's it's kind of fascinating to just, when we start talking about projects we're working on and things we're doing, that sometimes we can take vastly different approaches, or and depending on genre, maybe I attack something different because it's something I'm uncomfortable writing. Therefore, I have to maybe bring a little more of myself out into it. Or, or if it's something that actually is so natural to you, you can just kind of spill it on the paper and it just comes out gold every time. So yeah, there's way different ways to approach writing. And I think that's what we're going to try to kind of back and forth, ping pong some questions here. Maybe Meg can be the mediator and maybe bring some ideas that we can kind of maybe enlighten each other on.
For me, I lack confidence writing. My job has helped me kind of be a little bit more creative with my writing, but I mean, it's work stuff, so it's not the same to me. But I know for me personally, writing has always been a struggle. I just feel a lot of pressure in front of pen and paper, or if you use a laptop or a typewriter. I don't know. I'm able to form thoughts like when I'm just having casual conversations, but I just can't get them on paper. So that's a struggle I have, and I would like to hear some of your how you approach it.
Well, you want to go first, Clark?
Yeah, I'll throw a couple things out there. For me, and this might help some people out there, as far as like having ideas out in the wild when you don't have maybe access to a laptop just to flip it open. I always have notebooks with me, no matter what job I have worked in the past, which was my 9 to 5. I always had, notebooks with me and things like that. Even when I was in a band traveling around, obviously I was working on lyrics and things like that and music, but I was always still like, I come up with some kind of story idea. So I used to do an interesting thing where I would have a story and I knew where I wanted it to go. And so what I would do is I would write blurbs. I would almost have the chapters already laid out in my head. Like I've been like, okay, I know it starts here. I know I want it to get here. I know these are some high points I want. So I can chapter them out. And that's very counteractive to like a lot of writers who don't like that approach at all. They want you to just tell the story. They say just write it, and then you can go back and edit. I'm very particular sometimes where I know where I want some of my important beats to hit. So much like songwriting, I know where I want something impactful to be. So I go ahead and think about, okay, this far in, I want this to happen because I know this is going to be impactful to the story. This is going to be my resolution to that. This is going to be a conclusion to that. So, that's kind of how I do stuff sometimes. So I will actually have, and I still keep every notebook I've ever had. I'll usually come up with something that I really like whether it be a paragraph, just a couple sentences, paragraph, a line, even sometimes that I really, really like. And I'll just have them kind of lined up and I know where they fit in the story. And then I do the hard out, like pounding out the writing, doing the actual fluff, doing the descriptions, doing all the, this is how you fill out a novel kind of stuff. And that's just something I've always kind of approached and done. And I still do that to this day, whether it be a screenplay or a novella or a short story, whatever it is. I know where I want the beats to be and I kind of write around the beats. So very different than a lot of writers.
A question. So like the way I understand what you're saying is get your core beat by beat of like kind of story chunks, and then when you say like you flesh them out, is it like you're getting those in order and then fleshing out from each one and establishing like a flow, a connection to each paragraph?
Yes, but also I don't want to limit myself, so I don't put a word limit or like a time frame on that. So if it takes me 20,000 words to get from this to this, and then it only takes me 1,500 words to get to the next beat, or I don't want to limit myself to actually like what it takes to. I don't want to compromise the story for the sake of having a cool line.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just kind of the thing. It's just something that I keep in the back of my head, and I let this I'll be like, okay, this is exactly how I want it to start. And I know I want it to get to this point. And then I'll just write and write and write and write. And then one day it maybe clicks and I'm like, holy shit, I'm there. I'm finally there. And then I can drop that line and I feel very successful and I feel very rewarded.
Yeah. Yeah. The way you put that reminds me of how really good directors direct. Like if you'll notice that in some movies, like really top tier movies, sometimes the continuity is off. And I've heard a lot of them talk about how they will sacrifice that continuity for the flow of the story, or if that scene worked better for the overall story and flow of the piece or that section, rather than a continuity issue. It kind of what you're talking about kind of reminds me of that. They'll sacrifice that for a higher, to make sure that the overarching flow is right. But go ahead.
I have a friend who is a writer. She's written quite a bit, a lot of fan fiction, and she has published now 4 novels. She participates in NaNoWriMo. Like the entire month of November, you write, I can't remember if it's 50,000 word novella or novel or something. I can't remember the exact word number is, or word count. But she will write down in just like spiral notebooks a scene or like a paragraph, just this particular scene when she has it. And I guess she'll do the same kind of thing where in a similar way where she'll piece together the rest of the story with that particular moment. I'm not totally sure though. I haven't asked her about her writing theory, but I know she writes down moments, scenes in important things that are happening. And sounds like you kind of create a skeleton of your story in a way, and then go from there.
But both of you just mentioned novella. I'm unfamiliar with that term. What is that? Novella?
Basically,
is it like a short novel?
I think it is a short novel.
It literally is, a word limited novel, basically. So if you have a novel and you think your average novel is between 80 and 100,000 words, a novella is going to be like 50 and less. It's going to be something you can
weird
digest. Short.
You can call it
novel.
digestible novels. Yeah.
So my current issue right now is the story I'm working on. It's a really big story, but the way I write, it's really concise. But the other problem I have is the way I'm writing the book. I want there to be gaps in details for the reader to fill in with their mind's eye what's going on, how this went to that. So I'm intentionally writing kind of low resolution so that there's more or reader input. And and the other problem I have is I cut a lot. Like there was, especially when I do videos, I'll have like a long narration or like a document that was uncovered that was once in the book, and then I have completely taken it out because I'm like, anyone that is reading this already knows this, and it feels like I'm the keeping that document in there is fluff, and so I'm stripping it down to where there's more mind eye in the reader, and I don't know. That's what I'm struggling with, but I also have this thing where I've mentioned it to you before. I'm trying to just push it out the door because I could cobble this thing forever. But my writing style is kind of like what you were talking about. I will have like the original. This story started like over a decade ago, and then it was paused, and then it was restarted, then it was paused, and it's a lot of different things that were written and then like homogenized and connected and then edited and stripped down and then reworked to where it's one story, like to where it's kind of a web of all of these characters in one universe. And so I guess what I do is I'll punch out. I like, first off, I have my Google Documents app, and I'm a way faster typer with my thumbs than I will ever be on a keyboard. So I will just punch out like all whatever it is, and then I will go into my master document on, it's basically a Word document on my computer, and open up, because since Google Docs is on my phone and on my computer, I just copy and paste in sections, and then I go back, print it out, and then circle, highlight, remove, just tons and tons of edits, and then do all those edits in the word processor, and then print out the new one, and then just continually refine it that way. That's my whole thing. My happiest moment writing was, I'll just say it was on the Orbital platform. That's all I'm going to say right now. It was on the AC Orbital platform. I was going through all these methods. I was reading and listening to all these different interviews and stuff on different writers and their process. And one of the things I heard, one person where they tried to increase endorphins and different things, they would go on a jog first and then smoke a joint and then write. Then I also heard how Quentin Tarantino finally sat down and wrote the book Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because that's one of my favorite movies of his. And but it's novelized, it's a novel, and he used to kind of pitter patter at it, and then he said that he eventually started clocking in like it was a job. Like he would wake up, get his coffee, and then it was like 10 a.m. time to write until like whenever. So there was all these different kind of ideas floating in my head, but the best moment of like where the story got its like overarching connection that rippled through the entire book. I took on the higher edge of what my microdoses of mushrooms, like where your vision is about to vibrate, but it doesn't, like you're about there. I did a workout, and then I like depriving myself of things like I have a high tolerance for caffeine and nicotine, and I get in this weird loopy headspace when I'm away from those things for a while, and then you do the workout and you're on a microdose, and then you finally partake of those, you to stay away from those substances, and then you have this absolute roller coaster mentally, and basically induced autism, and then I'm just pacing around the house on typing away, and it finally melded on the bureaucrat turned wise man on the AC orbital platform. Hopefully people will know what that means in the future, but that is where everything hit just right. And what you were talking about, that that sense of like, whoa, like just utter pride and satisfaction, that was my main moment for that story.
And I like that you brought up deprivation there too, because that's a thing that I do a lot, like physical deprivation to induce creativity. Like
Yeah.
I do better if I'm kind of cold or kind of sad or kind of hungry, or like like whenever you need some of those basic human needs, sometimes you actually force out some creativity. I don't know if that's just a trope of like the starving pained artist kind of thing or what, but it's true. You can't really get some of that stuff done if you have a full stomach and a good night's sleep, or a, like something. And when that inspiration hits, sometimes it hits out of nowhere and you've got to do it right then. It's just like, the whole world disappears. I like being alone and maybe being cold and hungry and kind of sad for a little bit, and I can just kind of knock some stuff out, and then you can go take care of those needs.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. When did you get into writing, or what made you get into writing?
So I really wanted to be a musician first. That was definitely my calling, and it really hit me in my teens when I started really getting into music, like figuring out music on my own, and really through my best friend who got me into like, hey, he started learning guitar, and it started inspiring me to learn guitar. And, we were like really into the same music and everything. And I was like, man, I really want to do this. Oh, I want to catch up to your, playing ability. You play guitar, so I can do vocals. Maybe I'll be a front man. Maybe my dad was a bass player. Maybe I'll pick up bass. I already know how to play piano, so I can translate it over to that. So I really was focused on that. And then the idea of me being like, I didn't know anybody who was like a vocalist or a lyricist. So I kind of started that on my own, and I just started kind of writing lyrics and stuff. And, they were probably garbage originally, but then I had an English teacher who really inspired me. Whenever we had like exercises in class to do certain things, she was like, oh, we're going to write a Shakespearean sonnet or a Spenserian sonnet or something like that. And I would always be able to I would just ace all these kind of little things. And then, she once jokingly told me, she's like, you speak in iambic pentameter. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I even jokingly told her back, I was like, oh, I speak in iambic pentameter. That sentence is in iambic pentameter. Don't want to get too nerdy there. But, it's just the fact that it was just this random English teacher who wasn't like a permanent fixture. I only had her for like a year, like 1 year, 2 semesters or whatever. But she kind of encouraged me and was just like, hey, keep doing what you're doing. And as I kind of graduated high school, it turned from I was doing music more and more. I was in bands, I was doing stuff, and I had more idle time because I had a lot of time where I was sitting around and doing stuff like that. It was early college. I was a history major, so I was writing for history, like as in professional writing. And so my vocabulary obviously was expanding because was being a lyricist and I was being a history major. So so studying vocabulary wasn't a problem at all. Being creative, and then I guess mixing the two, being someone who could be a long-winded, tell a story through history, because that's what kind of writing history is. It's kind of telling a story, because, history sounds boring on the surface when you're being taught it in school. But when you see like real historians write, like they are artists. I mean, they tell a story through real events. And just doing that, but then taking it to a fictional world was kind of an easy one-to-one for me, just crossing over. I've been like, okay, well, I can write eloquently based on, real events, telling a real story that happened. I can write lyrics about something that I feel emotionally. Why can't I just combine these two and tell a real story that's my story emotionally, and then make it a fictional world, very almost Tolkien-esque, because that's kind of how Tolkien took his real life experiences and just made a fantasy world over it.
Yeah, he translated the Green Knight. He translated that. There's a translation which I really that's really there's this I have a favorite band, Coheed and Cambria, and their lyrics are based on singers' comics. Like it tells the story of comics, and it's really cool because he is a musician, it's like you, writer, just in comics instead of like novel, or maybe he has a novel version. He probably does. I just don't know. But that's really. What about you, Seth?
In terms of
when did you first start getting into writing?
I've always liked cinema to a ridiculous degree. I think it's like maybe not the like most important medium in art, but like a very important medium, because when it's done right, you're surrounded by audio workings that can on their own transport you to another place. You have a story, and then that story, I mean, you can have the same story and have it directed two different ways, and it can mean something very radically different to you. It's a very efficient way of in, like, let's just say I like long movies. I like 2.5 hour, 3 hour movies. I love those. I love slow burns. I could just sit there and just be engulfed forever. But let's just say like a traditional, hour and a half movie, it is such an efficient form of transmuting like an idea or several ideas to a large group of people. It's just an efficient way of communicating ideas and hopes, dreams, this, that, and the other. There's so many different things. It's just a really cool medium, and so I've always loved those, and then I've always wanted to make videos and movies and stuff. And so this was all brewing as a movie, and then at some point I realized this has to be a book first. Like there has to be a foundation of like a short novel or a book first before I can ever do like a full-on movie shoot of it. So it turned into a function for the cinematic aspect. But then when I got into it, I really enjoyed the craft of it. And it's really weird. I do photography, I do videography, and in the modern day, there's all this AI seeping into stuff. I really take pride in my like photographs and stuff, but for whatever reason, I've talked about this before. Whatever reason, AI doesn't threaten the visual aspect, even though I do old school, like all the effects on like my Instagram page are all in camera. There's no effects added or filters added after the fact. It is in camera effects. And that is such a fun thing to do as a craft. But for whatever reason, image AI manipulation and creation doesn't threaten me at all. It's just fun and interesting that exists. But something that I don't like identify as like a writer, for whatever reason, written out like Chat GPT, that for whatever reason, I have this fear of it. I don't want that anywhere near the writing process, because, and I don't know why, because I love video and photo, but I don't mind using AI tools or watching someone else use AI tools. I think that's a very interesting tool as long as it's used right. What really freaks me out is the idea of letting an algorithm, AI, whatever, help me write. That is a terrifying aspect. So I don't allow any AI anywhere near my writing craft. And I think it's because what you were talking about, that deep satisfaction after working on something, it's like a mind puzzle. It's like this long mind puzzle and mental effort. It's like a workout for your mind. It's like going to the gym for your mind. And so for whatever reason, the idea of something supplementing or making that easier, I don't like that idea. So AI is nowhere near my writing process. And it like to a phobic degree, but I think it's because it requires so much mental effort. I don't want any coddling there. So I don't know. I've thought about that. It's just an interesting thing. But yeah. It turned into a love of writing because I had an objective. I was like, I have to make this into a book first, and then I just started liking writing. To answer your question,
Nice.
And to a degree, that's I think a better way to tackle it. Honestly, especially early on, this is not trivializing the ability to write a novel, but writing a novel and you want to get ideas out sometimes seems, I don't want to say easier, but more cohesive in a certain run than doing a screenplay. Doing a screenplay is extremely complicated. And if you approach a story you want to tell by saying, oh, I want to write a screenplay, I mean, there are people obviously who are strictly, that's all they want to do is write a screenplay and try to sell it and everything like that. And that's fine. But if you're selling a pilot that's 30 minutes, how many pages is that really, if you think about it? There's like 2 minutes on screen time per page or something like that. Just think about 8 seasons of Game of Thrones is covering, 4 written books or 5 written books and 2 unwritten books. And so, if you're writing a screenplay, yeah, I mean, if you're just think about 1 episode or 1 season, 10 episodes of that. I mean, like how much writing goes into doing the screenplay version of that versus look at the novels themselves. It's it's just so much in depth and so much there in it. I don't know, like you would think writing a screenplay would be easier, but I almost find it more challenging to try to break up your story and leave subtleties and leave, hidden layers up to actors and mannerisms versus actually being able to write out certain things and what a narrator's thinking and then leave some of that stuff out on purpose for the mystery. Like you were saying, like there's certain things you want to leave out of your story because you want to leave some speculation. You want to leave people finishing something and then still wanting to ask questions about it. Or, I mean, if you can write something and people still want to talk about it, then you've done right, I think. So that's another big thing.
Yeah, Seth, do you find it challenging to like write a screenplay or
I understand the format of screenplay. I had some buddies I used to do that with. I think like if I'm remembering this correctly, you're talking about like fade in, fast footsteps approach and then we see that. I mean that's good for. I mean I guess I think it's also the way I make videos. Like when I make a live shot video where it's all shot through my camera, I have like a loose storyboard in my head. I rarely write out scenes, and I'm not the greatest drawer, so it's a bunch of stick figures and scenes and stuff. But I do that occasionally, but mostly just to get the flow of an idea out, and then because if I make something on paper and then I have to strictly follow it. When I shoot on the go and it's just in my head, and then I shoot in order of the way I want, it always turns out better than strictly sticking to. Like you have to be on the fly. Like maybe this angle looks great in my head, but this shot looks way better from this direction at location or whatever. So I don't really think in terms of like these hard. I have the edit in my head of certain scenes, but I kind of want it to stay there until it's manifest. It's like the same thing where it's like I don't like to inspiration for ideas, like where do you get inspiration or whatever. Like I don't like if there's a story I like a little too much or some topic or whatever, I kind of try to avoid it, especially when I'm in writing mode, because I don't want it to seep in too heavily. If I like a concept, something as loose as that, so I'll intentionally avoid things, and I'll let my brain like misremember and mangle ideas that I like. Like one inspiration I really like is finding mentally ill people on YouTube and listen to them rant about whatever. I'm serious. It's fascinating, like mentally ill, borderline schizo beliefs, and like how they go through confirming their beliefs, or just hearing them rant, or like weird religious sects or whatever. Just hearing people rattle on about these extremely bizarre things they believe is really fascinating. It's another reason I like conspiracy theories. I like, but I like to kind of absorb that all in like moments or time frames, and then let a lot of time pass to where it just kind of gets misremembered and mangled up in my brain, and then not really come at it like I'm writing that idea down verbatim, but that would be a cool way of describing this aspect in the story, and then I can kind of hash kind of some of that idea out and then refine it later. But even I do that visually too. I'll see something out of the corner of my eye, like I was watching years ago, like a Christmas movie, and there was a title card that the image was incredible to me. In fact, I saw it through my bedroom door crack at an angle, and I was like, I really like that intro card, that logo, so much. And then I stopped myself, and no, I'm just gonna, and like a year and a half rolled by, and I had the image of what it was in my head, but I refused to go and rewind it and see the actual image because I wanted to misremember it. And I came up with out of misremembering and everything, I came up with but I came up with a cool title card for my videos just from that process. So I like that kind of thing. But yeah, storyboards and the way of doing like specifically writing a story. What do you call it? I've a story screenplay. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like just, if I had the book done and it was in my hands and I had it in my back pocket while I directed a scene, I would actually prefer that than writing it out in a certain, because I plan to write it. I plan to shoot everything myself. I don't want anyone else touching it.
I was gonna ask my next question. Would you either, Clark, you first, would you be, or have you ever used a like ghost reader, or have someone help editing, or at least have somebody look already written, or do you keep it all to your, you just you doing all that, and then you just release, or you put it out there?
I pretty much keep everything to myself. I have had some people look over. I have another fellow author locally who I trust, who's looked over some stuff. I've never really been like, hey, what's your actual feedback? I mean, you want the honest feedback, you want the kind of brutal criticism just so you can fix stuff. But at the same time, I do play it pretty close to the chest. I just kind of keep stuff to myself largely. I'll rarely share it with anybody. That's basically it. Now, when it comes to certain things in other like facets of writing, like when I've done online freelance writing, then there is actually like workshops. There's where it's like, hey, here's the rough draft, send it out there, anybody, and then you've got the head editors, and then you've got basically the workshop people who are sanctioned to be there. So you kind of respect their opinion. It's not like they're there. It's not like Reddit or something like that where anybody can just, come in and say what it is. So that's for like article writing and things like that for different magazines or publications and stuff like that. So in that case, yeah, absolutely, put it out there in its raw form and just say, hey, here it is, unedited. Take a look at it. This is where it's going. Anybody have any ideas? Am I completely off track? So in that case, yeah, but that's also once again, that's not to me a passion project as much as it is a fun exercise that I just happen to get paid for.
There you go. And Seth, I think I know the answer. Have you ever had a ghost reader or someone text?
No, I have looked into someone just going over something grammatically and spelling and stuff, but then I was like, I have spell correct and I have grammar check software that I can just do it all myself. And the other problem I have is I have a very specific way. The speaker in the book, it speaks. It's a really specific way of talking, and I don't want to really adulterate that. And so I don't know. It's just easier for me to do it myself, and it's not like it's a 500-page book, so I can just do it myself.
Okay. And hi, Ro. Welcome. Do you have, or are you a writer? Do you have any thoughts on how to approach writing or how to approach writing?
Hello. And it's morning in my part of the world, so I may sound a little drowsy. No, I am not a writer, but I am a voracious reader. But all I know about writing is 4 steps. I'm sure there might be some shorthand notes, then the actual drafting, then probably the revising, and then the editing. But I was just hearing what Seth had to say, about the writing process going through the editor. And I completely agree with the emerging technology. And if you're writing a very short book or just a I'm not getting the word, but anyway, not
morning, you have an
anything less. Thank you. But yeah, anything less than 500 with the emerging technology and the spell checks, and you have you have Grammarly and whatnot. I think using an actual editor go through your writing is redundant at this point. So yeah. I'm happy to hear your thoughts, though.
I am also not. I opened with. I am also not a writer. I've always struggled with it. My thing is was art, like traditional, like just drawing. I doodled a lot of anime, and it was a lot of anime, and yeah, I'm trying to go away from that now. In my 30s, but anime really inspired me a lot. It still does. I appreciate that a lot. But I want to branch out to other things, like realism, things like that, and just coming up with my own style. So
I'm sorry. I just got the word. The word I was looking for was articles. Articles.
yeah,
You write articles.
yeah. And
Sorry.
no, you're fine. And I write emails a lot, and also my job has we have response templates through the software that we use that my colleague had come up with, and so but you can add to them freeform. So I've had to learn. I've done like it's obviously like corporate email kind of stuff, but it's helped me
Absolutely.
just kind of structure what I'm trying to put out there, like get my thoughts out. I'm much more
Right.
like visual. Also like I can show you something or I can just explain it to you, but I just can't get it on paper. And I've had to write the knowledge articles at my job, or just documentation on training materials, and that's also helped me. So that's as much
Yeah.
writing as I've done.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just
I
for
agree
work.
because Yeah, no,
I'm
even I agree, because writing emails versus actually writing a process document are two different things. Because email writing has its own language, like you cannot be um, informal, and it has to be read in a particular way. You cannot write it as you speak. Whereas I think you can take that leeway when you are writing up the process document.
Yes, yes, agreed. And like with those process documents, including screenshots and explaining like process. And that's
Mhm.
helped me some, but I don't know if I would ever be able to sit down and write a novel. So I think it's impressive, or a novel or a book series.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had some more questions, but I can't remember what they are.
I want to know Clark's book is going to be published.
I like a good mystery.
Which one? Because
Well,
this is my terrible thing. My terrible thing is that I started one, got about 40,000 words deep in it, and then decided all of a sudden I had this brilliant idea that I needed to put on paper immediately. So I set that one aside and started an entirely new one. And that's the one we talked about, that I've mentioned on the podcast here, about the human genome and everything.
Yeah, I was going to use one word, genetic. Is that the one that you started, or the one that's already 40,000?
That is the one that I started to put. I had put the other one on pause for. And that
How
is the
deep
one
are
that
you into it?
Well, that is why I brought up the whole idea of screenplay, is because I started that one with the idea of, well, let's see if I can write as a screenplay. And then I said, no. Let's just write this out as a novel, and then I'll break it up in chunks and do, director's notes from there. So that one is, I don't have a word count on it at the moment. It's a few chapters in. It's the best I could say, probably. But I'm also very meticulous, so it's not a whole lot of, like I said, I'm terrible about being that kind of writer that says just pound it out and then go back and edit it later. Like I will write it and then really refine it. And then if something comes up later, continuity wise, where I have to go back and change something, like I'll unscramble that, mess later, or untangle that web. But I try to get as refined as possible as I go through it. I want as little backtracking as I can.
Okay.
And so besides deprivation of like nicotine or things like that, is there any kind of pre-writing rituals that, or anything like that? Or
Oh yeah, I want to hear Clark's pre-writing rituals.
what are your like pre-writing, like what do you do to get prepared, like just what prepares you to sit down and just writing? What do you do?
I've changed a little as I've aged. I used to be very into the whole get up, go to my college campus well before I had any of my classes or anything that I had to, any obligations. Sometimes it'd be days I didn't have any classes at all. And I like to sit in like the rotunda and plant myself and do that, because just the energy of human beings walking around and just moving, the classes coming in and out, and just being in the common space, like, and just every now and then looking up from the screen. And, I'm a very visual, like, person as it is already, like on drawing kind of inspiration and stuff like that. So I might catch someone walking by and just see like, oh, what's that person wearing? Or, oh, they have a cool tattoo. I can see this barely showing out of a sleeve or something, something like anything like that can be like, just bam. And then it's in the novel. Now it's like, it's canon. It's like, oh, well, it's a little detail, but little details make a huge difference, because people want that. They want that visual picture put in their brain. So that's what you're writing. So, a little detail like that, like, I saw the slight vein of a feather, like, creeping out from under their sleeve kind of thing. Like, then that detail, now, oh, what if that comes back later in the story for some reason that person has a tattoo? Maybe, maybe you get to see what the actual rest of the tattoo is later. Or maybe it doesn't mean anything at all. It doesn't matter. It's just it's a detail. So like I would sometimes just look up and take note of what was around me. so sometimes that was how I would just post up. In other times, like I said, if I was particularly isolated or just wanted to be, it's just sitting in your own kind of office room, whatever your setup is. And I mean, just kind of, I hate to say forcing it out, but like sometimes I wake up in that mindset, like I have a bad dream or I have, or too real of a dream. Those are the big ones for me. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad dream, but I can have very, very vivid, realistic dreams. And I wake up, and even if it has nothing to do with my novel, it can already have unlocked that creative part of your brain because you've got the curiosity going. You have like a longing, you have this wanting feeling. You're like, I don't know what that dream meant. Or maybe it meant something really cool and you wanted to go back into that dream. And now you're, like I said, the longing feeling, you're like, you have this bittersweet feeling that you're no longer in that dream. And all of a sudden you have these emotions now that you can't cure. There's no cure for that emotion because you're no longer in the dream. You just got snapped out of it. Now in reality, flip the laptop open and now you're pouring it onto paper. So, I mean, it really depends on your mindset. If you're going in like you said about, Seth said about Tarantino treating it as a job and clocking in. Some days it is. Some days it's just clocking in and doing the work and just putting some words on paper and taking in your surroundings. And then some days it's all feeling, it's all emotion, and you can't plan it. You don't know when you're going to stop. You don't know when you're clocking out, quote unquote. You're just going to, let the feeling run out. And then I guess when that candle burns out, you're done. Close the laptop and, go about your day. Hopefully,
When
go ahead.
When you were saying about your dreams, when you kind of like record or like jot down ideas from dreams, do you write? Is that your main method? You're getting up, or are you saying that just it gets you in that mindset, or do you try to grasp some details, events in your dream?
I will grasp details. I'm very lucky to actually remember my dreams pretty well, and like I said, have very, very vivid, like tactile dreams that I almost feel like I'm there. So that helps with the creative process. Sometimes I'll have a dream that inspires another idea where I'm like, oh, let me, I have to roll over right now and pull out a notebook and write this down so I don't forget it because, it's 3 or 4 in the morning or whatever. And maybe I'll use that for something later. Or sometimes, like I said, if it wakes you up and it's closer to actually, a time that's reasonable to get up as a human being and I don't have anything to do that day, particularly if it's a weekend or something, then I will actually, I will just get up. And while the emotion is there, I'll start writing the story that I'm already working on. But now I have this like invigoration, about me because now I have like all these emotions running through my head, trying to make sense of what I just felt, what I just saw, and I can translate those emotions into actually what I'm writing.
Okay. Do you like my problem is I can't type fast enough to do anything that way or write fast enough. I've gotten up and I've started recording like audio memos of all the events in the dream, and I can't really remember. I'm really jealous of your ability to dream as detailed as you can. I started having more vivid dreams that I remember after the low dose naltrexone. It will make you dream crazy dreams, especially if you take it right before bed. But yeah, I'm jealous of that. I've only known a few people that talk about how they can interact with their dreams and remember stuff so vividly. That's such a crazy skill set.
Yeah, well, I mean, it also blows my mind the people that don't like. I have an extremely, like I said, I won't say I'm an eidetic memory because true eidetics are almost non-existent. I think there's like been one in recorded history ever, but that's
What does that mean?
It's someone who remembers everything they see. So like every detail.
Oh.
So like if tomorrow we were talking and I can be like, oh, Seth was wearing a white, white shirt with this emblem and everything on it. Like, you just remember, like I can be like, oh, I can tell my girlfriend, I remember what we were wearing on our first date, all this kind of stuff. And
yeah,
things like that, people who remember every little detail or of everything basically on their lives and things like true eidetics, they say can remember like the time, date, everything like that. You can ask them anything but I just have a very vivid memory where I just like imprint a lot of details really fast. Like I take in a lot of information quick. So that's why I'm able to remember my dreams, I think, like so vividly. And I get lucid very easily also. I've actually tried the whole I don't even know if I told you about the whole, I don't want to get off topic of writing, but you know how they have the thing where they say if you're in your dream and you realize you're lucid, don't ask anybody what day it is or what time it is. Because it'll like, oh, you've never heard that? Yeah, we need a whole.
I've heard.
We can't really do a whole episode on that, but it's basically a thing where people, I don't know, it's going around where it's just like, oh, if you're ever in a dream and you're lucid, whatever you do, like, don't ask somebody like what time it is or what. Can you tell me what day it is or what time it is? Because it'll like fuck up the dream. Like it's you're like on the other, like you're dreaming, you're on the other side of the veil. So if the people realize that you know you're on the other side, that you're dreaming, it like messes with them. So
weird.
So I've tested
Inception stuff.
Yeah, I've tested that one out before, and it was creepy.
They've noticed you.
Yeah,
I've had one or two dreams that have made me feel really inspired, and that I had some idea. And then the last one I had, I'm too embarrassed to say what it is but it was so cool in my dream, and I remember like not every detail. So that's cool that you get up and try to jot it down. Like,
yeah, Ro, do you record your dreams? Document them?
Good God, no.
Same. I don't. There's a lot of dumb dreams. I had a really stupid dream last night, and it had to do with getting the first tattoo ever, and I was so upset in my dream, and I woke up and I was like, oh, thank God it wasn't real, like, because it felt so real.
See, all this annoys me because that old thing where they always say there's nothing new under the sun. Anything that's been thought of has already been thought of, and blah blah blah. But like, if you do weird practices to where you're intentionally misremembering or mangling ideas or jotting down dreams or whatever, it's like, well, who came up with I don't know, this particular idea? Who was the first that did this? I'm convinced that new ideas that a human has never heard of can be done. I'm not saying it's easy. I think that it would be extremely hard, but I think that there can be new concepts or ideas that could blow someone away, and it not be like something that we've heard in like every, I don't know, Greek story or whatever. I think that there is some way of doing that, but I don't know what it is. I'm just trying to do every weird thing possible to get some weird idea out.
That brings up something. This will be my, I guess, last proposal question before I need to jump off and retire for the evening. But where do you draw the line on a conceit, an idea that you're going to like take so far, or you got to make it work, if that makes any sense? It's almost going back to what Meg and I were talking about before we started recording about like anime and certain things I couldn't wrap my mind around. I'm like, I can't suspend my disbelief enough. Like it messes with me, like to do that. Like what would you find like that line to be where it's like, is no idea off limits, or is there like a hard limit where you're just like, okay, I can't suspend my disbelief anymore? Like,
you mean in terms like an idea for a story?
Yeah, like someone like Stephen King. I think Stephen King is very good about forcing ideas that are preposterous, but he does it so well, and he keeps shoving it down your throat until you're like, okay, this is the world we live in, and then you just start to believe it.
No, I absolutely think that you can push something. I think that, I mean, what I did initially in a lot of the early drafts of the story is any just out of bounds idea, it would be written down and put in it. Now there's been like a filtering process through all the drafts, but I mean, there's a rotating air conditioner around Earth in my story that's orbiting Earth. So but the other thing is, I like how preposterous it is, but at the same time it's like integral to some stuff in there. So I don't know. I didn't know that about Stephen King. I mean, I know that in a lot of the stories there's like this really strange angle. I mean, you got walking bush sculptures and stuff, but I don't know. What I mean, do you think that that's do you think that it just has to be done right, or?
Yeah, I think it does. Honestly, actually, I'll bring up another author, Jason Pargin. He used to go under the pen name David Wong. He has a bunch of cosmic horror novels, and I've read all his stuff, even his sci-fi stuff too. He has a series of sci-fi books and cosmic horror novels. But same thing there. It's like sometimes it's so ridiculous. Like I have to reset my brain on like what is sci-fi, because you forget that something alien to us literally would be alien. It wouldn't be anything that we can picture. It would be something, like almost also Rick and Morty kind of stuff, where it's just like a farting gas cloud is like, like that would be an alien. It doesn't have to be something, corporeal that you can touch.
Its only purpose is to spread butter.
Yeah, it's like just conceits that are so crazy. But yeah, Jason Pargin, shout out to him if he's ever listens to our podcast.
Okay, question: Did he? So you said that he pen name. Did he write a story about hyper evolved vampires that humans misinterpreted the crucifix and write Euclidean geometry? But the thing is when this thing was developing, there was no hard angles, and so it would short circuit its like frontal lobe. Is that ring a bell?
Not from any of the ones I'm thinking of. No.
Wild.
Is there a vampire on a spaceship at any point?
No space. It's more of multi-dimensional horror.
There's an author I'm thinking of, and it sounds oddly familiar. And Neil Blomkamp, I found out about him through Neil Blomkamp, an interview with him, and there is this story that was written, and there are vampires that have, or what we would call a vampire, that have existed way before us, and when their main time of brain development through generationally, they lived in nature, and there certain types of angles. So, but they go into hibernation for extremely long periods of time, like generations of humans pass on before they even awake. When they do awake in this one iteration, all of a sudden humans have towns going on. Their previous cattle. So humans have built towns and town squares and all of this, and it starts to go into one and attacks, and it starts having seizures when it sees like hard angles that man is responsible for. So the villagers misinterpret what's going on with it as it is allergic to the crucifix. So that's how like the crucifix, lore of vampires not being able to stand it. Their predecessors, the way they evolved their vision, the way their visual cortex developed, they literally couldn't process hard right angles like we would, and so they would just seize out and go into convulsions. So the villagers, all this lore started to be built up around that. But anyway, the name you said, I could have sworn he wrote that, but maybe I'm wrong.